Thanks everyone for joining. We're going to wait just one more minute, if that, and then we will kick off. But thank you very much. This is Evan, and I'm joined by Murat here. Looking forward to having this conversation with you. So just give us 1 minute as people tumble into the meeting, if you will. Well, why don't we kick off? Again, I'm Evan Powell, and I'm joined here by Murat. Murat will be doing the demonstrations and so forth. We've got about just several minutes to kind of set the table up front. For some of you who are OpenEBS avid users, this may be just a reminder. For others of you, this may be the first time you've heard, like, who the heck is MayaData? But as you can see, most of the conversation will be around, here's what Kubera is, let's watch it do its thing, and so on. And Murat will lead us through a demo focusing on at least 4 sections. So a little bit about who we are. MayaData has been around for a few years, was founded by Uma and Kiran, two very experienced storage engineers who had done a flavor of containerized storage as a proprietary software-defined storage solution. They brought me on board, and we thought, hey, let's do this in a really open way. So open source is fundamental to who we are. Earlier this year, we took a look at DevStats, which is a tracking site, as you probably know, hosted by the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And we noticed that, holy smokes, if you measure our contributions by pull requests, we're one of the top 5 or so contributors now to overall CNCF projects. And this is before Litmus, which is a brand new to the CNCF project, is counted in. So there's a huge drop off, to be clear, from Google on down, but we're really proud of the fact that we're living our values, if you will, which is code is marketing and open source first, and OpenEBS is used a lot. As a company, we believe in a vision of the near future, and maybe some of our users and customers like Bloomberg are already living in this future, where you experience something that we call data agility. And I don't want to get too into the marketing of this, but the short of it is, if you think of what agility you can achieve working with stateless workloads, let's keep the bar that high. Let's assume we can blow away, let's say, one node of our I don't know, Postgres, and just know it's still going to work, that Kubernetes has been extended to truly be a data plane. So with all of that tooling, all of those practices that you learned when dealing with stateless applications apply to stateful. And we are seeing amazing outcomes, and it's largely due to the community adopting OpenEBS at massive rates. And now we see Litmus as well, which is a chaos engineering project being adopted quite a bit as well. So this is I think the last sort of marketing slide to just, and you can kind of go through the build if you would, but the point is, you've heard we contribute to CNCF projects. Everything we do is built on Kubernetes for Kubernetes. OpenEBS extends Kubernetes, it runs on Kubernetes. Litmus, same idea. The container attached storage pattern, which you hopefully have heard about, really can use disks within Kubernetes or can use remote via CSI. But the real point is that you essentially marry a little storage engine to your workload. And so now when you move that workload around, your storage capabilities move around with it. And you don't have tight coupling. You have loose coupling. Why do I mention loose coupling whenever I get a chance? Look at the definition of cloud native that the CNCF, Cloud Native Computing Foundation, promulgates. Loosely coupled, I think, is in the second sentence or so. By the way, this rules out shared everything approaches to storage, which by definition take all of your data from 100 workloads and put it into one big box. The container attached storage pattern's very different from that, and it does preserve that loose coupling. Cross-cloud is just massive. I mean, we're going to see it here in a second in Kubera for us, but certainly part of the value of Kubernetes and part of the value of Kubernetes extended as your data plane is the ability to keep that independence from a given cloud or a given set of hardware that you're running Kubernetes or other workloads for running your workloads on. That's, I think it. Now, introducing Kubera, couple just quick intro slides on this. You can see this on the website as well. But the basic idea is that when we were talking to OpenEBS and other users, what we saw is that they were spending a lot of time coming up with operations tools that they used to operate Kubernetes. Kubernetes itself was used to help operate, deploy, develop, etc. workloads. And so it was getting to the point that the work in developing tools to operate the thing that you were going to use to operate the thing that you were going to use to operate what you actually want to get done, which are workloads, was taking up a lot of time of a lot of smart Kubernetes experienced engineers. And so what we effectively did is see some of the common patterns: policy-based storage, yes. Compliance and governance, you'll see some of that today. There's more that we can and will be doing. Backup and DR, you sure as heck will see that. Out of the box monitoring and actions and alerts that just work, you see that. So what we tried to do is unburden and unlock the platform teams and the Kubernetes SREs by saying, hey, let us operate some of the stuff that you're just operating in order to operate the stuff you operate in order to actually do what you want to get done. Kind of where Kubera came from. It's a great name, by the way. I would suggest Google it. It's Kubera, it's our era, but Kubera is, of course, a Hindu deity as well. This is architecture. You can think of OpenEBS itself as having multiple storage engines. And in this particular view, you can see this user has decided to pick, one of each for each of 4 different workloads. And so Postgres is running MayaStore, which is in alpha, which is the world's fastest, as far as we know, NVMe native Kubernetes storage engine. We're talking that potentially millions of IOPS it can perform. It is in alpha. And you can see some of the other storage engines as well. So that's kind of the OpenEBS layer. Kubera in that big purple box, again, I already just talked about it, is really giving you some of that functionality. But importantly, also, it's the best way to get support for OpenEBS. Now, you don't have to be running OpenEBS. If you just want to use Kubera for backups, you can do that. And they don't have to be running on OpenEBS. They could be running on local PV. They could be running on some other system. We don't care if it's a PV in Kubernetes. We can help you back that up. But Kubera is largely used by folks who have adopted the container attached storage pattern, whether it's local PV or some other storage engine. And it is the best way to get support from our engineers. So I think with that, I would hand off to Murat here to kind of run through a little more of the architecture, and then we're going to start demoing it. I would just say those 4 boxes at the bottom are really important, which is just retaining your independence from cloud A or cloud B. You may not run on 2 clouds today, but maybe tomorrow you want to move from cloud A to cloud B or from on-prem to the cloud. Kubera and all of the components, including OpenEBS, are really with that vision. That's part of what we mean by extending Kubernetes as your data.
Thank you, Evan.
So, yeah, hopefully helpful. Yeah, take it away. Thanks, man.
And then thanks everyone for joining again. I'll quickly skip through the architecture slides, but so this is necessary to explain the idea. And most of us run internally inside the teams or across teams different flavors of Kubernetes and try to operate workloads on top of it. And of course, during that phase, operating Kubernetes itself get in our way. So, and an idea of Kubernetes and with Kubera is to unify all platforms in one and abstract dependencies. Storage is known to be one of the important dependency because data has gravity. So Kubera unifies and brings together all your platforms, which we will go through during the demo. And in the heart of that, of course, storage, but all the complexity is hidden from the users. And again, we will see it in the demo. And during the demo, we will cover all these steps, deploy and operate, and then more importantly, getting application workload analytics and visualization of our infrastructure, including application and storage and then everything, all the objects and resources in Kubernetes. Logging and compliance, very important. Like I said, friends, don't let friends store their logs on the same cluster. Sometimes, we see that when we talk to users as well, they run their EFK stack on the same cluster where you need the logs when there is a problem and you may not able to access the logs when that happens. And the last piece is there is more than that in Kubera, but we will cover in the demo backup, DR, and migration. Abstracting everything using Kubera enables some of this DR and migration points, very important. And on top of it, recently accepted into, again, Sandbox CNCF project Litmus. You run with the help of Kubera your chaos scenarios, chaos experiments to make sure resiliency of your workloads and stability. So again, this is what we will cover in the demo. I will not go through, of course, getting Kubernetes up. Everyone has their own favorite or choice of how you get the Kubernetes either managed or using OpenShift or Rancher and or EKS, AKS, whichever. Being in user space, we can run same on every platform. So I'll go through this during the demo. Let me start with how you get into Kubera first. Of course, from MayaData, you can sign in or sign up with just one click. I'm gonna sign in with my existing account. And there are some administrative tasks usually done by the account admin. So you do it one time, first time you sign up. So and Kubera supports large teams. So account owner, as an account owner, you can see I'm on the standard account. And if I am not running the free or other account plans, you can just subscribe by clicking here. And you get 14 days trial enabled with all the functionality. So we'll go through this, but these are account management parts. You can invite, like I said, new users to the account. But what I want to cover is, of course, cross-cloud monitoring and application monitoring, of course. Adding a new cluster to your account is also very simple. You click and then you pick your flavor of Kubernetes. This generates a YAML manifest. You apply it on your cluster, and then in seconds, your account, your cluster appears here. I have a couple of live clusters, and you can see the offlines as well. This is important since I mentioned you can still access logs of your offline clusters, and you want to know the last states when they disappeared, either intentionally removed or maybe something happened to infrastructure. You can still click and log, see the logs. So I will use these two clusters. One is on AWS, one is on GKE. AWS cluster is my kind of, well, we can call it production. I have applications, and I want to walk you through some of the benefits of Kubera running your applications. First time you add your cluster to Kubera, it is, as we say, necessary evil done one time, and then you consume everything using storage classes. But OpenEBS is also installed if you like to, and then you manage all the upgrades, and then simple pool upgrades or data plane or control plane upgrades simply through here, and as well as storage pools. I am a CLI automation person, like most of the SREs, but I still find it very useful because sometimes you need to generate these YAML files just for simple tasks. Instead, you can select the boxes here, and YAML file will be generated for you and applied, and all these management tasks are automated. Starting from overview window, what you see here is, of course, a summary of your pool storage consumption and health of director components, Kubera components. I'll start with application. So Kubera has automatic app discovery functionality, and this is very important. Well, you can zoom into workloads here, and we detect all the stateful workloads. And not only that, we also give you metrics and an easy to browse, of course, easy to enable metrics for stateful workloads, CockroachDB, Minio, MySQL, Elastic, you name it, all this stateful important workloads. You can click on that workload, and you see these three new tabs here. One of them is analytics. If you do it yourself, you need to also deploy the exporter for that application and find the Grafana dashboard. And if it's managed by another team or another member, you need to add that dashboard into that Grafana instance. Instead, with one click, we detect the application in the application discovery section, and also give you the analytics for that specific application. And each application has, of course, different needs. You can click here and...
This is a quick one. I mean, the number of times we saw users who were pretty proud of the fact they had figured out how to get to a level of automation around, because obviously if you're in a platform ops role, it's not like you're getting pinged by the engineers saying, hey, I'm deploying MySQL, you might want to get your monitoring ready. So you know, all the work that had gone into picking up hooks, and then we show them this, and they're like, okay, good, so I don't have to do that work anymore.
Yeah,
it just works.
And you get to that point almost in 30 seconds. You add your cluster and everything you need to monitor and make your application successful. Include most of the time now, I think Kubernetes is at that stage. It's not getting the app up and running, operating the application that brings this second day operations, running, upgrading, compliance of that application, including did you take the backup of that application? We have 2,000 instances. We see with our users running different flavors of databases and operating them. Sometimes it get missed or lost. I want to walk you through other functionality, but we'll get to this DMS. This is the backup backup feature also built into Kubera. I will deploy an application and share first this auto discovery part, and as well as a topology, how we look into topology. By the way, every workload, if you, let's start with MySQL again, you can get into logs and topology and volume analytics of each workload. So if you click from here to topology view, this is not a complex workload at this moment, but if it is, and you see all the pods and all the related objects, and this is also another project we contribute and maintainer of storage parts view works, and not limited to storage. It gives you visibility, it kind of troubleshooting help, and then especially if you are using also service mesh and connected clusters, it really gets complicated. It gives you all this topology view. We'll see a more complex view here under monitoring, which I want to start with. Let's keep this. Now you see all my workloads on this cluster. Let's zoom in a bit and wanna connect to my cluster. This is the kubectl get nodes. Let's make sure this is the cluster. Yes. And I'm gonna deploy a Percona workload here. So let's take a look at, let's do, what is in this. It is standard deployment, and you can see persistent volume claim. You need to make sure you are using the right storage class. And in this case, OpenEBS C store. And I will get into storage pool management as well. But quickly, let's try to apply dash Percona. You can see it is getting live populated. Yeah, well, let's make it less complex here and limit to now Percona. You can see the resources getting created. And well, of course, you can dive into more details from here. Get the all this description for this resource and get the logs from this view, as well as if you click on the PVC, you can quickly create a snapshot from here and clone that workload, especially if you are using Kubera or your Kubernetes in CI/CD. When you see when your build is stuck in a pipeline, you can quickly automate this part and get a snapshot and clone, give it to a developer, continue. So
that alone, that came up a number of times. I mean, that's a classic reason, frankly, for using container attached storage in the first place is semi-persistent, persistent storage, if you will. In CI/CD environments, sometimes you want to blow the environment away when you're done, and of course, you can do that. I mean, OpenEBS, it's just containers. But sometimes, as you said, the build gets stuck and you'd really love to get a clone of that data, what the heck is going on, or you'd like to, you know, depending on how you're doing masking and so forth, you might clone it and then mask it if you're using real prod data. I mean, that is a pattern we've also seen, and this helps quite a bit with that. But then also, I think there's a human thing here where it's peace of mind to some extent, because Kubernetes, as your data plane, can be up and running, and you go from one cluster was easy, you know, 100 workloads or whatever was easy. Next thing you know, you're at, you know, I don't know, 500, whatever, you know, some large users. Somebody wants to know the answer to the age-old question, dude, where's my data? And this does give you that visibility, and it's more than peace of mind, but peace of mind comes up, I think, anyway.
Although I think we are all now used to, of course, APIs automating. For large teams, visualizing really helps. And then this, when you're trying to troubleshoot shoot something, well, gives you a big picture. So I'll switch to application. You can see now Percona is here detected. You can execute volume, health looks healthy. Let's try to run this with DMAS. Well, I want to first show this analytics piece as well. And one other workload, let's see, MySQL. And let's get into the backup part. From application menu, you can create, this is now called a strategy backup. You can define your backup strategy right from that application discovery menu, which now I'm creating a new backup schedule. As you can see, well, you get two options. On the background, we use Velero and Velero plugins and utilize also contributing to a bit Velero as well. So if you are familiar with Velero, Velero has a concept of plugins with storage providers. If you are using C-store, in this case, using block-based may be beneficial. The difference is C-store is a copy on write storage engine, which means every time you take a backup, it will be a differential, and differential backups will take less time. But this backup piece is not limited with OpenEBS. You can take a backup of any persistent volume, EBS, GP2, or other storage providers, PVs. And in that case, you use the RESTIC-based, file-based backup. So it is as easy as picking your S3 provider. So this is getting expanded now with hardware vendors as well. Well, on the background, if you go to CLI, you can configure all S3 compliant targets, but this is more keeping credentials and making it user friendlier. So I'm gonna use S3, AWS S3, and then picking, let's pick US West 1 and interval. You can set it very granularly, and I'll take it, let's see, daily backup, or let's pick hourly, every hour. And as soon as you create the schedule, so this is going to create the schedule as well as take the first backup. And from this view, I will go back to the DMAS view here, but from this view, if you need to, you can click on one of the schedule and restore your existing backup on the same cluster or a different cluster, which can be now used for migration. I will do this and then show you next. But so going through other menu items, I'll dive into DMAS last. Management, you can see your storage pools. This is a part of account owner's task. You don't do this every day. First time creation. If you have disks added to your cloud vendor or on-prem, especially beneficial, extra beneficial on on-prem, someone needs to take care of all these volumes, and you can do it through here. And then you can also see through NDM all your block devices attached, and you can see there are actually 5 devices attached, but no one is utilizing. If you are on cloud, this means you are wasting that capacity.
Yeah, just a quick comment on the necessary evil, if you will, of managing the underlying devices. To be clear, and correct me, Murat, but you know, a storage class consuming OpenEBS, that's kind of the interface and division of concerns for the developer.
Yes, a good point.
We'll need to think about it. But then, of course, it's YAML all the way down, right? So within OpenEBS, how do you tell it, okay, how to pool these underlying devices or cloud volumes? Well, there's more YAML. And certainly one thing we saw, again, is lots of folks who had figured out how to, or at least many folks who have figured out how to automate that and to do it in a real nice GitOps friendly way. That's cool. But it can be a pain, right? So now I'm using the YAML to help define these pools. And so one of them had actually hacked together something kind of like this, where it discovers. So what's going on is OpenEBS, not to deep dive too much, but is discovering where can I store stuff? Where does OpenEBS store the information about where I can store stuff? Well, it's a custom resource, so it's effectively extending Kubernetes itself. And then it's populating that and giving you a little menu, so you can say, I want to group these three. So it's saving a massive amount of time, I'll put it that way, but it's also enabling a more dynamic experience by doing the auto population or the auto discovery, I should say. And then all of this is still stored off as YAML, of course, so that it's automated on the back end once you have this set up.
And according to, yeah, thank you, Evan. And according to our user surveys, on-premise increasing a bit recently. Currently OpenEBS is used on cloud a lot, and then a large percentage is on cloud. But imagine this: this is like running your own EBS, and this takes care of all this complexity of creating the pools. Well, like Evan mentioned, this is probably one time or not everyday task. But you are increasing your infrastructure, adding new servers, you can easily create a new pool and define the RAID type here, and everything is done in Kubernetes, the cloud native way, not consuming some black box outside through, well, CSI drivers. So, and to your point, everything after this is consumed by storage classes again. So, and if you look at one of them, let's describe this one, kubectl describe storage class, OpenEBS store. You can see somewhere here, storage pool claim. Yes, you can see this is using CStore disk pool, which CStore disk pool here, and then all you need to know is the pool name as a developer or SRE. Rest is done by the platform itself. Little bit of logging here. So I mentioned in the beginning. Let's extend it to longer. This today. This provides you, gives you a built-in managed AFK stack. Your logs are stored in this platform, and there is a retention policy based on your plan. With the free, you still get a week of 7 days of log retention. Logs are stored here, and for standard it is 30 days, and enterprise goes up to 180 days. You can store logs for your active or offline clusters using this. And on alerts, this is very flexible, of course, in terms of rules. So you can create, as you can see now, I have 34 new alerts, meaning someone created new volumes. You may want to know about it, or if you don't, then you change your rules easily here, node, pool, or other alerts. Some of them are straightforward. You either disable or enable notify when it's up and running, or you can set the threshold or numbers easily by changing this and saving it. So this is about the alert part. Well, you can acknowledge them here and things like that. So want to go back to DMS, and one of my cluster. Actually, let me go back to clusters and show you my other empty cluster, GKE. So there is nothing here, and I want to migrate one of my workload, or maybe my AWS cluster is gone. I need to bring up my application back up and running again. And so this main menu, DMS, provides you your data motion schedules or backups. So we just recently, well, find my schedule, oh yes, CSE, this is the one. So on, yes. This is one of my schedule, and you can see, I think this was getting hourly backups using file-based, REST-based backups. You can see the restores, who restored and where this data is, which destination this is restored previously. But you can also pick a point, and then you can see the date and time when this backup is created. It is as simple as.
I'll just sort of throw this out there to you, but also to everybody on the call. I mean, if you feel like sharing, how many of you are moving towards ephemeral clusters, quote unquote?
Oh, great point. Yeah.
Because certainly we see for like hygiene reasons or other reasons, which is to say, we don't want an exploit to last more than 7 days. Well, there's one way you might be able to do that is to wipe the cluster every 7 days. I mean, literally destroy the cluster.
We see that pattern a lot.
Yeah, yeah, financials and dark sites kind of places. We tend not to see the dark site, we just hear about it. But anyway, so would love any input from you, because I think Murat and I and others on the team are like, wow, okay, so there's probably even more we can do from a workflow perspective, I would have thought, in Kubera to enable that workflow. Obviously, this is a piece of it, get the data back. But maybe there's more that we could do there. And, so the question is, if anyone wants to share, are you blowing away your clusters more frequently now? Or we also have users, right? You can see from some telemetrics, if you will, those who haven't turned it off, that there's OpenEBS clusters running OpenEBS that have been running since like 0.2. We're talking like almost 3 years. So any thoughts on that would be really welcome. Yeah. Sorry.
And increasing remote work, also increasing data science use cases as well. We use it internally, but we also see across our users, developers are running small minikube clusters on their VMs or on their laptops when an artifact is created or data is created. So you can take a backup of that group of pods and including the data, and another developer or your coworker can restore it from here to look into the results. And then the use cases are, I guess, unlimited. It is up to community to discover. That's why your feedback is welcome here. Wanna quickly, maybe before we end, and there is one more thing I wanna share about support. But this is my GK cluster, and kubectl, I think needs to reconnect. And this is a new cluster. There is literally nothing here. Yeah, it is empty. So what I'm gonna do here, well, first look into what's in the backup, but then restore it. So you can dive into the backup and you can see the files. This part, by the way, also with the next release, we are adding additional functionality to get into the backup and look into data itself. But I'll try to restore. We had a previous demo. Hope everything is cleaned up by GKE. So this is the clean cluster. restore is started. What this is gonna do, pre-flight checks. If I cleaned it, well,
We had a version of this
yeah,
discussion in Central European time, India time.
yeah, this should tell me. Pre-flight checks, and the PV is getting created, and the file is actually downloaded to that target. Restore is now in progress. Well, by this time, probably I do have some path, yes. And PVC bound already. One thing, well, this can be used to migrate data across different storage vendors as well. It doesn't have to be OpenEBS. So all you need is the same storage class. This can be local PV, single copy, or EBS volume to OpenEBS. All you need is create the same storage class, but that storage class can use any to any
Yeah, and
on the
this
backend.
is, not to throw the cliches out there, but the strangle the monolith type pattern. We see this being used,
Yeah,
whether Kubera itself, again, we're open to ideas on, are there literally screens we should build to help you there. You can see how it is used or can be used for that pattern. But also, just wanted to mention it, it gives you that visibility and how are we doing? Oh, actually, this this PV that we thought we were going to be able to strangle it, but actually it's getting a lot of I/O. So over there, so maybe now's not the time to turn that one off, and vice versa. And again, when you just POC, how big a deal is it? But imagine when one of our medium-sized users and you have, I don't know, 15 different flavors of databases, all different instantiations coming and going all the time. And your project is to help strangle the monolith. It's a green plum, which is a great product, or whatever it is, and you want to start pulling the data from the underlying database onto Kubernetes volumes, underlying storage onto Kubernetes volumes in a way that doesn't disrupt the actual application. That's the kind of thing you can do.
Yeah, and when we have a user conversation, actually this came up recently with a large financial. They are running on one side on a legacy hardware vendor, moving to other side. Well, it turns out that we don't have that hardware on the other side. How do I move the data? And this can be, as you can see, done in seconds. And now I'll click on application. Now I do have the application on my new Kubera cluster. Now it is healthy. You can see all the health information. Of course, this you can create a new schedule here, and you can enable analytics as well. So before we get the questions, I want to also point to this support piece. Well, you can access the docs always, but we are always here to help you, not limited to Kubera storage, anything to make your application successful. You can contact a real engineer through our live support here. And actually, if you ask a question, how do I create a storage class? We have a bot running, pulls all the information related through the help desk and our knowledge base. And if this doesn't help, and then most of the time quickly answers your question, and then you can know I need help, and then someone will be there to help you on our site. And OpenEBS community has been always very active, and in this way you get you cut the middleman and get direct access to real maintainers of the and engineers of the project. It's very useful. Anything I missed, Evan? When I run through.
No. Yeah, again, I'm I'm sitting here firing questions to the audience because I think you can see that it hits multiple use cases, a lot of the common use cases that certainly we've seen in the care and feeding of Kubernetes as your data layer. And what I'm wondering, I suppose, Murad, and to pose it as a question is, what's coming next and why? If you can kind of give us some tips as to where you think Kubera is headed next.
Oh, yes, a good question. Let me present here. Back to my slides. Well, this is how you sign up, and you can see the detailed, well, this is not all the functionality. You can see the detailed features on the website, but what is coming next? Well, very good question. So this is the first large release of Kubera, but we are learning from users and other users using the Kubera platform. But our focus is application, and we want to get, we want to show you all this data agility. We want to provide you data agility tools and required stack to prove that you can run stateful workloads on Kubernetes. This will include, now you will also get the benchmarks. What we do today, that's another one I haven't mentioned because it is hidden under Kubera, CSI lifecycle management. Well, CSI is all good and keeps us sane with APIs, but at the same time, also it is pretty much still work in progress. You have AWS, you have Google, and then different vendors. You need to manage their drivers as well, and you need to make sure you're on the stable one. Kubera will take care of all this major cloud vendor CSI drivers, and if you happen to be a user and let's say you have a proprietary hardware, we are also committed, if that's your requirement, we'll get that into life cycle management and take care of the upgrades of CSI driver and automate southbound provisioning, which that can include getting VMware volumes attached to your nodes, getting VMDKs created or vSAN small volumes created. More into multi-vendor data management.
That's a key one, and it's almost originally, again, was like a necessary evil you saw. We use the word dynamic a lot because folks want dynamic provisioning. It's part of what OpenEBS is known for. Dynamic local PV, Elastic and others, open source communities will recommend OpenEBS for its dynamic local PV, but how dynamic can it be if you're not if we, OpenEBS and Kubera, are not able to then dynamically provision via CSI the underlying systems? So we went down that path. Okay, great. And then we realized, as you said, Murat, the CSI interfaces are changing for these vendors, right? And so just managing that, and the pipeline of those, and certifying them against, well, ourselves, OpenEBS, certifying, like we're not charging them or anything, but making sure that when the OpenEBS Enterprise Edition runs, it runs well with all of the CSI engines, interfaces that, say, the last, X generations, current generation for AWS, current generation for GCP. That's actually a lot of work. And so I think it's great that we call it out because it is a necessary evil. But on the other hand, it also speaks to really extending that dynamic nature of what we do, irrespective of the cloud you're on or the hardware you're on. And you're seeing more and more of these popping up as now it's kind of it's a snowball, isn't it? A community that is beget interaction with lots of other communities and users. And so there's always more there. Feel free to tell us, hey, I really want you to support this particular NVMe thing via CSI. We'll prioritize it and get going. But,
Yeah, or as well as S3 targets, and I want to support this vendor, quickly get a backup to that vendor I manage. We are happy to do that. And a couple of other things, advanced compliance as well, a bit related to, again, stability, or can be seen as a management task, but you want to make sure everyone, all the second-day operations are automated and no one is missing a check. That means you want to make sure all the applications are backed up, maybe all the application, because we have the discovery part. You want to make sure all container images are on one version or the other, things like that is coming into Kubera shortly. We are on a monthly release cadence. And of course, we see some of these issues ourselves as well. You are running your sprints and development cycle and some external infrastructure dependency. Some future changes, some new API gets introduced. You need to support or change your YAML files. Things may fall into cracks. So we want to make sure through compliance, everyone is compliant with your rules.
I think in enterprise, or just to maybe talk about that, I mean, basic is free forever for quote unquote individual use. It's not just for individuals. It's up to 5. Am I right on that?
Yes, yeah.
And then you have standard, which is almost free, by the way. It's $49 a month per user. And that is intended to help, teams and many companies, startups, others. That may be all they need and want. And you can see there's, you want us to hold your logs forever, which may be a compliance sensitive environment. Right? Then, we need to charge more. So you get into enterprise. Or to your point, compliance and advanced compliance, we have some requirements, or at least strong suggestions coming, where it's great that I can see that of all these MySQL workloads, to pick one, 3 of them aren't getting backed up. And but what I'd really like is, to be able to alert on that. I would really like to have, basically, there's reports that people are filling out internally to, validate that the Kubernetes environment for data is compliant, operationally compliant. So I'd like to see that in a report, so I don't have to do the report, right? So that's the kind of thing we're adding. And then there's some notion of how you would apply policy there, or how you would tie into policy engines, whether it's us or other policy engines. So you could just, do background cleanups, like, no, I know you picked the don't back me up MySQL storage class, but once you get over, I don't know, 10,000 IOPS average over a period of transactions over a period of time, you're getting backed up, and make it so. We have not built that, but we're getting at least suggestions in that direction. But the reporting, sure as heck, it's a pain that people are having to address.
One also, maybe before we end, mention these two, on-prem and adaptive backup and restore. With enterprise, you also get all this Kubera platform as an on-prem. You can install it on your managed environment, run it yourself, even air-gapped. But the other one is we got this use case or request from an existing customers. Well, you may have a data, very large terabytes of data. In the case of disaster, you want to get the cluster, the idle cluster back up and running with the workloads. This feature, adaptive backup and restore, is also kind of proactively restoring the data to an alternative cluster, and if that if you need to switch between clusters, you can it lets you it buys you time. You can quickly enable that workload because data will be there already. I think that is pretty much it on product and Kubera. You want to go through this?
But just quickly, I would say we're a community-centric company, and so this is your community, right? And so how do you what do you want it to look like? How do you behave in a community? I mean, feedback is wonderful. You see on the right side, OpenEBS adopters. That's a way to feedback to give back as well, which is to say, hey, I'm Comcast. I started using OpenEBS largely for some of these operational tasks. By the way, as you can see initially, sort of the operations tooling to operate Kubernetes, to in turn operate stateful workloads, and so what I'm saying is, if you're an OpenEBS user and you haven't filled out adopters.md, please do so. We're going to get our act together and start offering to send people T-shirts or cool, swag, but it would be wonderful, and we deeply appreciate it. And it's not just us. It's now I want to know how how does somebody run Redis with OpenEBS? Oh, these guys Plaid Cloud already do it. Click. I see how they're doing it. So there is a real way to get back to the community, and we really super would appreciate it. The blog has blown up recently, and if you want to write a blog, by the way, we are welcoming you. There's also, you're going to see more and more stuff on, I don't know if you guys ever go on to dev.to or whatever it is, but our own quote-unquote blog has some real technical content, as does the OpenEBS blog. And I would say, if you look at like Amit's blog, he's one of the real leaders in operators and building operators and thinking through how do you even test the operator, right? And there's a good blog on that he wrote and shared some of that. He's one of the core, he works at MayaData, one of the core maintainers of MetaController. Or Brian, who's been working with Apache with Kafka for a long time, and shared a pattern. So yeah, take a look at those and join us on this webinar if you will. What this is going to do is, it's actually from Kieran, who leads the OpenEBS project within CNCF and is our chief architect at MayaData. And he's an objective community-first person who's going to also have some metrics on performance, because when OpenEBS first came out, we didn't focus on performance, we focused on keep your data safe and make it easy to use. Well, I think we now are showing that OpenEBS performs, but let's let the data speak for itself. So he's going to talk a little bit about that, and I definitely highly recommend it. That's out in July, as you can see. Questions? How about questions for us? Are there other questions before we let everyone go?
Did we miss anything? Everyone, again, thank you for joining, and thank you for your support. So, and adopters MD file, this location sometimes is how we also adjust our focus on workloads. Very important. We find out about new workloads and then adjust Kubera backlog based on this. I see. Did we answer your question, Arthur? Thank you again for joining. Nishanta mentioned you raised your hand.
We answered Dean's question, but he was just highlighting use cases include no vendor lock-in, including what we call data gravity, or seamless migrations, mapping, and he asked about business model. So tried to explain it there, but Kubera is free forever for individual use. Almost everything is open source. Obviously, we're running it for you. But for not much money, you can get going on the commercial version, get some additional functionality, give back that way to the community as well. And then enterprises are using this platform, and many of them, as they get to from 5 users to 50 ongoing subscriptions. So that's also an option.
To Harry's question, actually it is on the backlog that you mentioned Antos certification. Yeah, we do test against Google and all the flavors running on Google and GKE, but yeah, that is something
You
actually
have no idea how much impact, or maybe you do have an idea, but you asking us is one thing, but ask your Google team as well, because it helps quite a bit. We can do all these certifications, but we've gone from, you know, not having that much demand to having just a lot of folks. And often if there's pull from, say, our friends at VMware, some of whom are supporting OpenEBS in production and, you know, themselves on Pansy and stuff, then that actually helps that team get approval for working with us, if that makes sense. So similarly, you know, you might literally, just by asking the Google side, help Google to get approval to get an engineer assigned to help us get through that faster. That's just an example. Maybe, I don't know the certification, maybe it's trivial, but yeah, ask us, but also ask your platform providers and clouds, and they know about us, and the more helpful they can be, the faster we can move.